Welcome to the Two Blokes Chatting radio show on 94.7 The Pulse. Music, interviews, news, and, well, Two Blokes Chatting. Now, here are the two blokes.
Who we got on the telephone today?
We've got very much friend of the show. I've had the privilege of chatting to this fellow in different formats on radio. Probably,
and he still comes back. That's the amazing thing. Yeah.
Probably 7 or 8 times now. I really appreciate it. Former South Barwon... Well, no, he's not former. He is a South Barwon Premiership coach. He is a former Geelong VFL coach and line coach, Carlton line coach, and now relaxing back in the private school system. Dale Amos, welcome back to the Two Blokes Chatting radio show.
Welcome, boys. It's look, I appreciate you having me on, and it's quite a grand introduction.
No, well, it's a long career.
Well, it's funny because, g'day Dale, it's Neil. Rob has never worked in a school. I was a school teacher, and you obviously are now relaxing back in the private school system. He clearly hasn't worked in a school.
No, well, I'm probably in the honeymoon period where we're not playing games, and there's been no selection, and there's not a great deal of pressure on performance at the moment. So a bit like an AFL pre-season, I'm very much in the honeymoon period where everybody's happy and everything's going well, and we wait and see what happens as it unfolds.
I was talking to a gentleman Wednesday night who's in a similar position to you, and good morning, Ian Cover, if you're listening. For the first time in 41 years, he's got a Saturday morning in the footy season free. How have you found not having to line up to what would be a pretty gruelling job in an AFL system?
Yeah, look, I guess I consciously made the decision to step away from footy at the end of last year. Things finished up at Carlton, and there was a chance to go back in, and I made the decision that I guess for me right now the right thing to do was to step away and explore something a little bit different. And my role now at Xavier is one I'm really excited about and really enjoying, very much to challenge myself more in a management position, I guess, but also to, for me it became about balance and time with my young family who seem to be growing up incredibly quickly, and their time, particularly at school, is going to be over very soon. So, look, I've really enjoyed the change. I've had a few days, I think, where I've missed footy incredibly. The start of pre-season, the first day back, which is always very exciting, and then when the matches came around, I've had a sort of feeling in the pit of my stomach where I've missed it a little bit, and I'm sure that'll be the same case come sort of Wednesday and Thursday when the game starts to unfold for the season. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I think it's become, I know we've spoken about it in the past, but particularly with the squeeze on footy departments, it's become increasingly challenging and more demanding, I think, on coaches in particular.
We are with Dale Amos, and I was just about to ask, Dale, when you were coaching the Geelong VFL side, and there was certainly an emphasis within the team that you want to win, but there's also more of an emphasis on you're preparing players for a higher level. In the role you've got now, school would be wanting to win to get up into that private school footy ladder that they run in, but they get great plaudits out of having players drafted. Are you in a similar world now, balancing those two priorities?
Look, I think so. It's probably a really good analogy, and it feels somewhat similar in terms of the objectives you're talking about. And there's an enormous amount of prestige and desire to want to be successful and win. That's evident, particularly with the first 18. There's also the lure of players being drafted, and we've got some talented youngsters who fit in that mould as well. And then you've got a huge group of players who they just love footy and want to play. So there's probably a bit of a comparison to South Barwon and my time there, I guess, where you got some players who, I coached Jason Kirby. He wanted to be a great player. He wanted to be the best player he could be, and we tried to provide an environment for him. But also, we had guys who played in the reserves, trained one night a week, and enjoyed having a beer with their mates after the game. So you're trying to create an environment that caters for everyone so that they can have, the best experience they possibly can.
My son went to a school that is very, very, very close to Xavier. In fact, they share a fence line. And, there's a certain degree of love-hate between the two schools, Xavier and Trinity. But then on a Tuesday night and Thursday night, they all head in their car down to Oakley together and they play with the Chargers. One of the great things, I guess, about the particular area that the kids are living in, and yes, it's an absolutely privileged environment, but to be able to also then work with some of the people at the Chargers have got a remarkably good record for drafting as well, haven't they?
They do, yeah, and it's probably by proximity of where they sit, they do draw heavily from the private school system, and I think I've been incredibly impressed. I've spent a bit of time down at Oakley because we've got quite a few boys down there. Jason Davenport, who I worked with at Carlton's, coaching down there and doing a great job. But also, I've been incredibly impressed with the calibre of people that are involved in the school system, and quite a few people have been involved in elite sport, and particularly with AFL, who are lending their services and mentoring these young men. They are incredibly fortunate to be in that environment.
And if you look at it from the school's perspective, I don't think it's a big secret to suggest that some of the schools in that region may encourage people to come to their school in the form of scholarships. I guess when you're throwing away the equivalent of $30,000 or $40,000 a year on scholarships to a player, there's probably a bit of pressure on them to perform as a sports person, because I know they a lot of them are passed under the level of academic scholarships, but I think there might be a little bit of a wink in that direction.
Yeah, look, I guess Xavier is a bit of an exception. It's certainly in an area that's grown, but Xavier don't actually offer scholarships for sport, so there are no sporting scholarships. We do have a Bursa program that we run through the Northern Territory, where students get the opportunity to come down and board at the school and be part of the tuition program there. But there's no scholarships, but it is a big part of it, and it's I guess off the back of players coming in or students coming in for under scholarship system. You're right. The idea that they can perform really well for the school, but also there's prestige, I guess, in those students potentially being drafted as well and going on having had an association with the school as well.
Dale, let's get back to the AFL system. At the moment in Geelong, as is most years, there's big debate around the name of Chris Scott, his longevity at the club, whether he's the right man for the job. I'm certainly in his camp and cop a fair bit of criticism, but in the system at the moment, a coach normally would have a lifespan, but he's talking about how he's been invigorated by 3 or 4 new blokes into the coaching system this year. Is it possible in the modern AFL system for a coach to continue to reinvent himself a la Kevin Sheedy?
Look, I think so. I think having the new people, and I've spoken to some people at Geelong, I think the freshness of having some new voices as part of that coaching group, which had been incredibly successful, but had been together for a period of time, I think it challenges often the way you think, and it makes you reevaluate what you're doing and whether you can do things a little bit differently, and it certainly creates a new energy around the place. So, I've no doubt. I worked with Chris at Geelong for a period of time, and he's a very good coach. And now the key thing with a good coach is make sure you support him with a really strong team, and he's had that for a period of time. Matthew Knight and Corey Enright and Matthew Scarlett all moving on, but they've got some really impressive people who've come in, which I think will give them a new look. I think you'll see a slightly different brand probably from Geelong this year because of that. But people need to understand how incredibly difficult it is to win premierships, and if you're a Geelong supporter, you should go and have a chat to a St Kilda supporter or a Carlton supporter or an Essendon supporter. When every year you're going to be in the mix and some chance to be able to contend for a premiership. That's not normal, and most sides would just dream about being able to do that. They've come close and haven't quite been able to be successful, but in terms of being in contention, he's done an incredible job. I'm
testing the memory here, but I think I've got it right. A couple of the blokes that have come back, James Kelly, well known, you would have been up close and personal with him for a long period of time, but Matthew Egan, we didn't see much of him as a player through injury, but he almost immediately went into the club structure, and I'm working on the theory that you were with and working closely with him. How did you see those fellas as potential coaches back in that time?
I think Kel, from the day I walked in, you could tell he was probably coaching something he was going to move into. He had a great ability to be able to teach the game. He understands the game incredibly well and has a great ability to be able to articulate that to players. And he is progressive in the way he thinks. So I think, he's experienced something different at Essendon, which will be really good for him. I think, Shannon Burns has come back from Melbourne as well. But
he was the other one, thank you.
Club and then gone away. I think that is really powerful. It's powerful for you to understand that there's a different way to do things, and I think Kel definitely brings that. But he was in the process when I first started at Geelong. He was in the process of trying to come back from a navicular and just starting his coaching journey. We've actually become incredibly close off the back of our shared experience at Geelong, working with the academy and the development of players. And he has an incredible record, and he was in charge of the Melbourne Academy and development of players through until last year, culminating in the premiership at Melbourne. So he's an enormous acquisition for the footy club. I think he's very, very impressive in that space, and he's a great acquisition, like I said, for the footy club.
Given your knowledge of the Carlton list then, and discounting the Sam Dohertys of the world, who are the obvious club leaders at the moment, amongst some of the lesser names, which one do you reckon is best cut out to be a senior coach one day down the track?
There's a couple that I worked probably relatively closely with that are the most obvious, and Doc's one. The other one who did a little bit of work this year is Nick Newman. He did some coaching as an assistant with the AFLW, and I know he impressed the people in charge there, and particularly the girls. I spoke to Karen Harrington the other day, the captain, and she was incredibly impressed with how Nick's gone about it this year. He's the really obvious one, I think, out of that group. And like you mentioned, Sam Doherty before, who they're probably the two. Cade Simpson, who is not playing anymore, but he's the other one who's probably in the wings a little bit. Had COVID not hit when it did, I think he would be working in an AFL club right now. So I know he's building his resume right now, trying to get himself in a position to maybe get a full-time position in a footy club, and he would be incredibly impressive as well. All three of them have great footy IQ. They've all got a great ability to be able to connect and teach their game.
The future of the game, Dale. We saw a grand final last year that a person non-emotionally connected just loved what we saw with the quality of the footy and the style. At the moment, you've come from a club that's sitting in the middle of the road, so when you're up against a Melbourne Bulldogs Brisbane style, you really have to be defensively focused. But is the long-term view of a club, let's look at St Kilda and Carlton and Adelaide, those clubs in the middle, have they got to want to play that Melbourne Western Bulldogs Brisbane style to be relevant, or do you think we're going to see a phase of really negative stuff to try and pull them back?
No, look, I think you leverage your strength and build a list around your own identity. I think it's a mistake to try and be anybody else. Richmond, Geelong, Hawthorn in previous periods have won with their own style, and I think it's a mistake to try and play the same way that those successful teams do. There's no doubt there's core fundamentals that they do that you can implement and improve on, but I think there is unique styles, and I think the ability to be able to execute it really well is the key. It feels like sides are being a little bit more aggressive with the offensive side of things and trying to play a relatively ballistic style of footy, and all those sides that you mentioned, Port Adelaide probably chucked them in the mix as well from last year, all play a really aggressive, fast style of footy. The challenge with that is being able to be just as fast in defence and get up and make sure that you don't get exposed going the other way, which I guess was probably, in terms of from a Carlton experience, is something that we didn't quite get right. We probably got the speed of offence right, but we couldn't quite get up quick enough in defence to be able to set up the ground the way we needed to ensure that you don't get damage going the other way. So, look, I think footy's in great shape at the moment. I think we saw probably the grand final is a great example of the rule changes working with the 6-6-6, and when I can tell you from coaching a back line, if an opposition midfield get on top and start running out the front of stoppages, it's incredibly daunting and leaves you very exposed to being scored against, which is, like I said, from a supporter point of view, is incredibly exciting.
Yeah, it is good to watch, and I hope it's the way to go, and I certainly hope my own club adopt a little bit more of that without being ridiculously gung-ho. I don't think they can quite afford to do that, but their base of the Geelong game has been defence first, but I think when you got it in the middle of the ground, and I would like to see it kicked a little quicker towards Hawkins and Cameron rather than the normal philosophy, and I'm sensing that will be the case coming forward, and the whole competition is going to be benefit. Now, you're going to be a watcher this year, just a watcher. Will you be an avid watcher, Dale, of AFL?
Look, I think it's probably tempered early. I'll enjoy watching without trying to get too engrossed in it. I'll probably try to deliberately separate myself a little bit more from an emotional point of view so that I don't miss it too much, because I know that I will throughout the course of the year, because I've been incredibly fortunate to be in it for quite a long period of time, and it's it was an unbelievable experience that I'll be forever grateful for. But yeah, look, I'll enjoy it. I've got two boys, and I'm really looking forward to being able to go with them to the footy and just sit and watch. I haven't for 13 years I haven't really had the chance to do that. I've been to a couple of finals with them, but that's about it. So look, I love the game. I think the game's in great shape, and I think it's an incredibly exciting thing to go and watch. So I'm very much looking forward to be able to just sit in the stands and have a pint of beer in the outer and watch the game unfold without being too emotionally connected to it.
That is good. We appreciate your support, and hopefully during the year we may tap in again just to get the observations, because there will be trends and patterns, and you sitting from the sideline will sort of understand what's going on, which for us who think we know about the game, we clearly don't know too much at all, but your analysis is going to be pretty important. Best of luck with your new role. It sounds like you jumped into it full of excitement and enthusiasm. Hopefully it goes well, but congratulations on the 13 previous years. You've certainly kicked on from a country footy background, which is good to see.
Yeah, thanks guys. I really appreciate it. I feel very fortunate, and hopefully I've been back involved a little bit with South Bowen. Hopefully I get a chance to be able to share a bit of what I've learned over the last few years and give a little bit back to local footy. I'm very much looking forward to being able to do that as well.
And a one-word answer, hopefully two-word answer, given my bias. Who wins the flag this year?
Melbourne are pretty good at the moment. I think they've been incredibly impressive through the pre-season. I think they're in pretty good shape. I think it's unbelievably open, and sides that have a good run of injuries are probably going to be the ones, which is a pretty generic answer, I know, but I think we shouldn't underestimate how even the competition is, and the fact that there's probably a dozen sides that are going to be in the mix at the start of the season, which is unbelievably exciting.
If he doesn't make it in the school system, there's always politics, isn't there? Well done, Dale. Thanks for joining us on the Two Blokes Chatting radio show.
Thanks, Dale. Best wishes.
Really appreciate it.
Cheers, mate. Dale Amos, formerly AFL assistant and line coach at Carlton and Geelong, these days at Xavier, the hated enemy from where my young fellow went to school. 27 minutes past 10 o'clock. You've got the worried look on your face.
I keep getting them mixed up. Xavier, are they the orange ones or the green ones?
They are very much the orange ones.
Oh, are they?
Yeah,
that's all right.
They're Catholics.
They're mine.
Yeah.
Hang on, they're Catholics are green ones.
Are they? Oh, well, there you go. See, the green ones. Yeah, they're
I
the
thought
Catholics.
they were the green ones.
Because I was confused, because Trinity wear a green jumper. so that's all good. Now we're all good. No, I'm with you now. No, they're the Catholics. You've got the Catholics and the Anglicans on opposite sides of a fence. And I mean, these days it means nothing, but boy, oh boy, it means something down there.
Oh, it did. Way back. Goodness gracious me.
Yeah.